Morning everybody. I have one request before the class. So please switch off your mobile or silent and keep it in silent mode. It's very disturbing. Uh, Today's topic is high level synthesis. The digital design automation flow. I think one class already taken by Professor Dasgupta on introduction to digital CAD. In this week, there would be three classes on this design automation, one on high level synthesis, one on logic synthesis, and one on physical design. That's basically in the flow of digital automation. In this class, I will give brief introduction on VLSI digital flow, and then the main topic high level synthesis and its several phases. Let's come to the VLSI digital design flow. So whenever you are asked to design a chip, so what are the steps by that you will get a chip? So first of all, you have to specify, you have to finalize the specification. What should be the exact functionality of the your chip? What should be the set of inputs? What should be the output? So you have to finalize your design first. Then you have to finalize your architecture also. So what kind of architecture you are going to take? It's a is it you are going for whether it should be ASIC flow or FPGA flow, or maybe it's a RISC architecture or maybe CISC architecture. So you have to finalize your architecture specifications. Then the automation phase, like high level synthesis, it's take the higher level behavior and convert to the register transfer level. You know the different level of abstraction in the VLSI design flow, I think, like higher level abstraction, then RTL level, then gate level, then transistor level, and so on. So this flow basically converts a design from a higher level to the lower level. Like high level synthesis takes a higher level behavioral description and convert to the register transfer level description. Then logic synthesis take a register transfer level description and go to the gate level design, and then physical design, and then fabrication of the chip, and finally packaging and testing, and get the final chip. Like here you the first picture is basically so the what should be the input specifications and what should be the output of particular chip, and then this is one kind of RTL. Like we have several blocks and their interconnections and all. And the gate level, suppose your ALU is like this, you are going to go to the gate level of a particular design, like one of block in every block what should be the exact gate level design of that, like that, and this might be the some structure of your final chip. Then what is the importance of design automation? First of all, it's shorten the design cycle. You understand that if you have to you are asked to design a circuit of 10,000 gate manually, it's almost impossible to do manually. But if you I ask you to write a C code of a suppose a sorting algorithm, it takes 5-10 minutes to write. And if you have some tool that converts to the register transfer level of that, because when you I ask you to go to the merge sort hardware for a merge sort, you have to understand what should be the functional blocks, how many registers should be there, what should be the controller logic there, how many clock I will use. So lots of issues you have to taken care. But writing a C code, it will take 5 minutes. And if you have some tool that will design within 2-3 minutes that RTL design, so your tasks become easy. So it's basically shorten the design cycle, and also more explanation of the different design styles. You already I think designed some digital design for your digital process. So you understand there should be more for a particular specification. There might be more than one options. You can use 2 functional units in your design, maybe 4 functional units. You can use 10 register. Interconnection you can use buses only. You can use marks based design, so, or bus based design. So lots of variations are there. And if I ask you to with the best solution, so one in the RTL level, so you have to design everything and then you simulate and finalize what should be the best thing. So it takes lots of time. But if you if your tool can explore these opportunities, so it will take less time. And also fewer error in the design. Design a big thing, always there is a chance of errors, but if it's tool correct by construction, tool can design that, there should be means more scope, means there are less scope of errors in the design. And also specification driven optimization at the higher level of abstraction, this is also an important phase. In this era we have always power our design, energy or design, or that will take less time, fast design. So uh, in the higher level, I am not going to the detail of this thing. So you can change your specific behavior, and that can affect in the design. It will take less time. Like in the higher level, uh, I can give a basic example. Suppose you have to perform this a plus b plus c plus d, simple. So what you can do, so finally you will get the, so it will take 3 steps, whereas you can do the same thing. So it will take one less time. So you can for this expression you can break into this way or maybe this way. So this is a very basic example where you can save one time step. So this is one basic example. There are lots of, if you have you can modify the code, you can transform a code to some other code which is energy efficient or power efficient and all. So I am not going to details of this. So now come to the main topic, high level synthesis. I will explain this high level synthesis with this example, very small example. It's basically difference and equation solver. Its behavior is like this. I am not going to the details of what the behavior means or and all. So let's take what is high level synthesis. So it's basically take some higher level behavior written in maybe C, VHDL or Verilog and converts it to the register transfer level description, which consists of a data path and a controller. So the RTL level, if you view the RTL level description, it consists of a data path. So it consists of some function units, some registers and their interconnections, and a controller is basically control the execution of the data path. In every time step it generates some control signal, 10 value to the data path. As a result of that, some operation will be executed in the data path and some status signals will be go to the control signal from the data path, and depend upon the status signal what should the next control step that will be decided by the controller. So it's basically you design these things in your design lab. So the data path and the controller. Now what are the steps by way means so you are given this behavior and you have to achieve this behavior. So what should be the basic steps to achieve this type of RTL description for a high level behavior? The steps are preprocessing, scheduling, allocation binding and data path control generation. Let us discuss with an example. Suppose you have designed a RTL. You can view a RTL like it consists of some function units. Set of registers and their interconnections. Maybe like this. So if you design, so you can view your RTL level description like this. It consists of set of registers, some function units, some interconnections components that connecting and do. So from a behavior like this, you have to have you have to reach this level which consists of this and which will perform this operation in the behavior. So if you so let's understand how the things can proceed. So first of all, in our hardware, you will understand in the first control step. Suppose your R1 and R2 come to function unit 1 and it performs suppose addition and the results go to suppose R3. So your in the first control step, in the first clock, you execute suppose R1, R2. In the next clock, you decide suppose you decide this function unit will perform R2 and R3, R2 minus R3, and it will store in R1. So R1 equal to R2 minus R3, like this. So essentially first you decide in every clock what will be the operation that will be executed. So basically you decide what should be the operation will be executed in clock cycles. So this is the first steps. In the pre-processing you just leave, because you have to your initial behavior you have to convert it to some form where the high level synthesis will start. The basic step is scheduling, allocation, binding, data path, and controller generation. So first steps you have to decide in every clock, in each clock, whatever the operation that you have to execute. So that is the basically scheduling. You have to decide that you assigning time step to the operations. So you have this behavior. You have to decide in first clock what are the operation you will execute, in the second clock what are the operation you will execute, these things. The next step, you just think in the behavior you have the variables, but in the design you have set of registers. So one option is that you will store each variable in each register, and then the things okay. But the problem is that then it will take lots. Your behavior may lots of variable there. So then you need lots of registers. So your cost will increase. So one option is that is it possible to share some variable in a particular register? So that you have to decide. And also you have lots of operations here like multiplication, division, addition, and so on. So will we use individual function unit for individual operations, or will we share a function unit to for different operations? So these things you have to decide next, and this is basically this allocation and binding steps. So you will decide will I use how many register I will use, how many function unit I will use in my design, and also what are the compositions of the function unit in our design. So you have to decide all these things, and these are the basically steps in allocation and binding. And the next step is this data path and controller region. So you after that you know the what are the how many registers are there and what are the performance of the function unit. But now you have to interconnect this register to the function unit. So this is the step is data path generation. So now you can decide whether I will go for bus based design, or I will go for marks based design, or I will go for some other type of design, mixed type of design or not. So what kind of interconnection I will use. So you have to decide next. And also obviously you are going to optimize your design by interconnection cost. Like you will not going to use as many as always you are going to use minimum number of multiplexers or minimum number of demultiplexers. So this is the step in data path generation. And next step is controller generation. You know in every clock what are the operations you have to perform in your design. So you design your controller such that it will generate that type of control signal to your design, so that your desired operation will be executed in the hardware. So these are the basic steps of high level synthesis by which a high level behavior is transformed to a register transfer level design. So in this class I will take each phases and give some of the algorithm that will do the required task. So this is an example here. Suppose you have high level behavior and then it's schedule. So it's basically in the you decide in first time step what are the operations you will execute, in the second time step what are the operations. So you basically assign time step to the operations. The next steps you decide how many register will use. Like here you can see we are using for 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 for 8 variable we are using 4 registers. And the sharing, like for R3 will store V0 and V6 in different times. Obviously their lifetime will be non-overlapping, so that you can store them in a single register. And also you decide 3 functionalities required for you, and this one will do the operation 1 and operation 3 and so on. So this is basically your allocation binding. And then finally this data path generation. It's basically generate your data path interconnections. And finally the controller. In the controller you can see it generates some 1-0 signal in each steps to the design, so that it will perform some operation, and it will generate some status signals to the controller, so that it can decide I will go this way or this way. So this is the basic flow. Let's discuss the pre-processing steps. So initial behavior is like this, but the high level synthesis will start with a CDFG form, control and data flow graph. In the it's basically consists of set of basic blocks and some control blocks, and this is the control flow among these basic blocks, and each control block will consist of 3 address operations. And that means in this behavior you basically break this operation in small operations and store the intermediate result sum in some temporary variables, and finally you will achieve u equal to this. So this is basically this operation basically perform the same operation that was represented as single expressions, and each of the basic block will consist of this type of operations, and this basic block actually store the data dependency among these operations. So what is data dependency? As you understand in the behavior, like this V3 V6 V2 basically perform V0 star V1, and now V0 is computed here and V1 is computed here. So unless and until your V0 and V1 are available, you cannot execute this operation number 5. So basically that means operation number 5 is depends on operation 1 and operation 2, and this type of dependency is represented by the data flow graph. Here you can see this V5, these operations basically depends on V1 and V. If some operation is depends on some other operation, so there should be a directed edge from these nodes, and so on. So by that way you will represent the data dependency among these operations. Now come to the point scheduling. In the scheduling, as you understand, you have, suppose in a particular basic block you have n operations and you are asked to schedule them in m time step. So how many options there? So there should be m to the power n minus scheduling options. So you have to choose best of one of them. So obviously there should be exponential algorithm that will give you the optimal solution, but this is not the desired. It will take lots of time. So you have to go for some heuristic that will use some strategy so that you will get a good solution. Some of them is I will discuss in this class, like unconstant algorithm, like there no constant are given to your scheduler, and two of them is as soon as possible as well as late as possible. Resource constant, like if I specify that you can use this number of resources, then how you can schedule your operations. The next option is time constant. I can, if I tell you that you have to execute this operation within this time, within this number of times, so how many so you have to optimize your resource within that time. So these are the basic. I will introduce, I will discuss as soon as possible, as late as possible, list scheduling and forced heuristic scheduling. First, as soon as possible. From the name it's understand that you execute your operation as soon as possible. For example, here this is the data flow graph for the DUI52 example, and the logic is that whenever I discuss that this V5 cannot be executed unless and until V1 and V2 is executed. So the logic is that if some operation are available or they can be executed, you execute them. So how the things will go, like here operation V1, V2, V4 and V10, they basically takes the variables and execute, so they are not depend on any other operation. So you just schedule them in the first time steps. Also this V1, V2, V4 and V10, this, so you schedule them, and also this V3, because they are also depend on the variable. So you schedule them in the first time steps. So when you have scheduled them, now when V1 and V2 is scheduled, so V5 is now available. Similarly, when V3 and V3 is scheduled, now V6 is also available. When V10 is scheduled, so you are now V11 available. So you schedule them in the next time steps. So whenever some operations are not depends on somebody, we schedule them. Okay. So this is basically your as soon as possible scheduling strategy. It's very simple strategy. Then what is the advantage and disadvantage of this algorithm? It's basically fastest possible schedule it will generate, but it always requires less number of control states, but problem is that it does not consider your resource. It always use maximum number of resource. For example, if you see this here, in this step there are 4 multiplier, 1 2 3 4. So if you have to go for this schedule, you have to have some 4 multiplier in your design. But if somebody means, if your design constant tell that you can use only 2 multiplier, this scheduling strategy will not work. So it does not consider your resource constants. Next come as late as possible. So it's just a reverse strategy of the previous. You schedule as late as possible operations. So it goes from the leaf of the dependency graph to the upper level. So you schedule those operations that are the leaf of the dependency graph, like V8, V11 and V9. So you schedule in the last steps. So whenever you schedule them, now this V7, V3, V4 and V10 are available. So you schedule them here. This way it will go on. What is the advantage and disadvantage of this strategy? So you understand this strategy, I think. It's basically reduces the resource usage compared to the as soon as possible strategy, but it's necessarily not give the best resource usage. For example, here we can see in the ASAP solution it takes 4 multiplier. If you have to go for this schedule, you have to use 4 multiplier in your design. Here you can use only here 2 multiplier, here 2 multiplier, 2 multiplier. So 2 multiplier is enough for your design, but it's not the best solution. For example, but that means it's not the best resource usage solution. For example, if your design constant say that you have only one function unit that can perform either addition or subtraction. So if you schedule this operation here, it's possible this operation can be scheduled here also. Then you can see this here only one adder will be required and here only one subtractor will be used. So one function unit can perform these 2 operations, but this solution is using 2 different function unit to perform addition or subtraction. So it reduces your function means resource usage, but it does not optimize your resource usage. It's clear. Next comes to the resource constant scheduling. As I already specified, that means if it's your design constant say that you can use this number of resources. So what should be your objective? You want to optimize your time using that resources. So one of the popular algorithm in resource constant algorithm is list based scheduling. In the list based scheduling, let's discuss that. Basic idea is it's basically maintain a priority list of the ready nodes, and during each iteration it's basically use all the resources in the state by scheduling operation in the head of the ready list. And if you have conflict, you will conflict because you have a priority list, so you will resolve the conflict according to the priority. Basically, now let's discuss with an example. So the same example that differential equations are number. So you assign priority to the operations. So the priority that is decided here is the mobility. Like means here if I so it takes 4 times. You understand, this is one time step, this is one time step, this is one time step, and this is one time step. So it takes 4 time step to execute. So if you mobility means can you move a operation from one time step to another time step, so it can optimize your resource usage or not. For example, here if you move this operation to this time step, so this whole flow goes down, so it will take one extra step. So that means your mobility is 0. You cannot move these operations because they are in the critical path of the design. Whereas these operations you can execute here, execute here, execute here. That does not change any, that does not require any extra time steps. So basically its mobility is 4 minus 2 is 2. I mean the mobility factor is calculated from the ALAP solution minus ASAP solutions. You can see here in the ASAP it's scheduled in the second time step and it's scheduled in 4th time step here. So 4 minus 2 is 2. So by that way you can set the mobility. and this is their priority. The less number means it has a higher priority. If you delay some of the operations here, you need some extra time step. So by that you will decide the priority among the operations. Now you will maintain a ready list. So ready list is the same, the operation that does not depend on the previous operations. So they are ready to schedule. So initially I already discussed this V1, V2, V3, V4 and V10. They are in the ready list. Now your resource constant says that you can use two multiplier, one adder, one subtractor and one comparator. In the ready list you will see this V1, V2, V4 and V3 are multiplier. So you have two multiplier and four multiplication operations are ready. So you have to select two of them. So from the now you have to you have a conflict. So you will use the priority rules. So you will see that this 0, they have the 0 moment, they have the highest priority. So among these four you will select V1 and V2. It's clear. So you will schedule is V1, V2 and V10 only one addition adder is available and one addition. So you will schedule V10. So when V1 and V2 is now is scheduled, so your V5 is now in the ready list. So you again compute your ready list. So your compute ready list is V3 and they are already this V4 sorry V5 V3 V4 is already from the previous list and V5 is now due to this V1 and V2 and V11. This is because of this V10 is now executed. So V11 now ready to execute. So now your ready list is this. The same way now again you have three multiplication, you can see V3, V3, V4 and V5. So among them you will select two multiplication, like you will select 0 and 1, these two and not this one. So you will schedule this V5 and V3 and V11. So this way you will in each iteration you will construct your ready list, and among the depends upon the resources you will decide which are the operations to be scheduled according to your priority rules. So this is basically list based scheduling. Now come to time constant scheduling. This is just the reverse of resource scheduling. Like in your design you specify that you have to execute this operation within this time frame. So what should be your objective? To minimization of the resources, your function unit usage. Some of the popular algorithm is like force directed scheduling, integer linear programming and iterative refinement. I will only discuss this force directed scheduling strategy. So in the basic idea of force directed scheduling, so your time frame is given, you have to execute these operations within this, and let's consider that DFFQ example, and let's assume that the it's specified that you have to execute this operation in 4 time steps. So now you have to minimize your function unit within that 4 time step. So what it consider, it takes the ASAP solutions and the ALAP solutions and then compute this. So basically time frame of each operations. What is the frame where it can schedule? It's basically you understand these two operations are scheduled in ASAP in the first control step and in the ALAP also in the first control step. So their time frame is only within the control step 1. For example, this operation is scheduled here in this time step and here this. So his mobility basically control step 1 to control step 3. So by that you can calculate the time frame of each operations, and then you calculate what is the priority. You just sum up the priority of each operation in every control step. Like this operation have as it go in the 2 control steps, so his priority are half, and it goes his time frame in 3 control steps, so his priority 1/3 in the control step 1. So you will calculate this and you just sum them, like and for here you have to compute for every operator, like for multiplier, for adder, you have to do the same thing for every operation. So I am considering the multiplications only. So you understand in the first control step you need 2 multiplier and 0.5 and 0.33. So your 2.833. Similarly for control step 2 it's 2.333, like 1, 0.5, 0.5 and 0.3. So what does it means? It means you need at least this number of, means 3 multiplier to execute these operations within the specified time frame in 4 time step. So you will, this is the maximum of functionality that you require. Now you have to decide how we can reduce this value. Like you just consider these two you have to execute in the first control step because you cannot move them. But this can be shifted to this step, and this operation can be shifted to third control step. Then you need only 2 time step, 2 multiplier to execute this. So see, you know your means maximum value. Now you have to restructure your design. I mean, you will move the operations according to the time frame in the time frame, so that can you means reduce these things. So this is basically force directed scheduling. Clear? No, time constant means your time is given. You have to schedule this operation within this time. So your objective should be minimization of the function unit. Within time, how what is the minimum number of resources that can use to schedule all your operations? Clear? And in the I am explaining here in the list base. Only thing is given that your resources you can use only 2 multiplier, but I am not specifying how many time, I mean, how much time you will require to execute. So you are going to find out what is the minimum time required for your design. So this is basically time constant scheduling. Your time resource is given. Sorry, means it's a resource constant scheduling. Your resource is given, and you have to find out what is the minimum time required to schedule all these operations using that resources. And the list based scheduling is one example of that kind of thing. And in time constant, I specify that you have to execute all these operations within this time, and your objective will be what will be the minimum number of resources that you can use to schedule all these things within this time frame. Yeah, that means freedom means you have your objective will be minimization of them. Freedom means your objective will be minimization, because you in your design you always going you are going to use the minimum number of resources. Clear?
Sir, if in a program the time constant is given 4 units, 4 steps, and the program can also be done in 3 steps, but in 4 steps it is requiring less number of resources, then output will be 4 steps.
Because your input is 4. In your input to the program is you have to use 4 time step. So even if it can be scheduled in 3 time step, but your objective will be how you can optimize your resources using the 4 time step. Okay. Any doubt? So now consider some realistic constant, like as far as now we consider all the functionality same all the functionality takes same amount of time to execute all operations. But in practical situation, this is not the scenario. Like a multiplier is always computation intensive than a adder, and it takes much means higher time than a adder. So for example, if you consider here, suppose you have one multiplier that will take 30 nanoseconds to execute, and this addition and subtraction take 10 nanoseconds. But as far as the schedule that we have that we have considered till now, we have not considered this type of constraint. Like so, the schedule that we have considered so far we have considered, it will assume that the clock period will be 30 nanoseconds. It's not the 10 nanoseconds. So to execute this operation, it will take 60 nanoseconds, because it will and 20 nanosecond of this frame will be unused, and here for this function unit 20 nanosecond will be unused, and here it will use 30 nanoseconds. So is it possible to consider some advanced scheduling training so that it can optimize the clock time also, clock period also? So how we can what the 3 approach is multi-cycling model, pipelining model, and chaining model. So let's consider the multi-cycle model first. So what the what would be the alternative of this. The alternative, like you can execute a multiplier in two clocks, and in each clock you will execute one function. Okay. So that means in the first, after the first clock, this, even if this is scheduled in the first clock, the result is not available after the first clock. After the first clock, only the result of addition is available, and at the end of the second clock, the results of both the subtraction is available as well as the multiplication is available. So this is one strategy, that you will execute the operation that will take higher time in more than one clock steps. Okay. The next option is operation chain. It's like that you here, that means you set the clock period is the corresponding to the minimum the function unit that will take less time, and this is just the reverse of that. You will set your clock period is equivalent to the function unit that will take the higher time. So you set your clock period is 30 nanoseconds, and within that same clock you will execute both of the operations. So that means your the data path will be designed so that the results of that function unit can be directly fed to the input of the next function unit. Usually what happens, some input from the register come to the function unit, it execute that, the result is again stored in the registers. Instead of that, your data path here, it will show that the results of this function unit will directly fed to the input of this registers. So you have to have a special kind of data path for that. The next option is pipelining. What you can do, you can consider your time frame is a minimum, like 10 nanosecond, and you know pipelining, no? Do you know pipelining, everybody? No. So first let's explain the basic logic of pipelining. Suppose this is your function unit. It basically executes, suppose x equal to a star b, and it takes basically 30 nanosecond to execute that. So, so if your function unit is like that, and you want to execute 3 operation on that function unit, so how much time it will take? 90. First you will fed AB, then C and D, and then E, F, N. In the first frame it will come A star B, then C star D, and then E star F, and it will take 30 nanoseconds. The pipelining, we consider is basically the task that is performed in the function unit in sub part. So what happens? If you consider this function as a 3-stage pipeline, it has 3 stages. It will take suppose 10 nanosecond in the each stage, and in the first step it takes A and B, do some processing on them, store the intermediate results in some registers. In the next after that next 10 nanosecond, the next set of input is fed to the function unit like C and D. So this part will process on the C and D, and this part will process on the intermediate result of A and B. The next after 10 nanosecond you will fed E and F. So this part will process on E and F, this part will process on C and D, and this part will process on A and B. So after 30 nanosecond, A star B is available. But the advantage is that the next after next 10 nanosecond, your C star D will be available, and again after 10 nanosecond your E star F will be available. So how much time it will take? It's basically 50 nanosecond to to schedule all to execute these 3 operations. And if you have higher number of operations, so it will your performance will increase more. So this is basic pipelining strategy. So here also the same strategy. You have suppose 4-stage pipeline, and it will take each stage will take 10 nanoseconds. So you can execute more than one operations in the same function unit. Okay, it's parallelly. So this is the basic strategy of pipelining. So you can consider your function unit as a pipeline unit, and you can fed the data so that it will the way I explained here, it will go that way. So this is the 3 alternative strategy to handle these drawbacks. I am not going to the detail of the scheduling strategy for this, but this might be the some cases by that you can handle these problems. Okay. Now come to the point allocation and binding. So I already specified that in allocation you have to in the binding task is selecting minimum number of resources, how many register we use will be required for your to store all your variables, as well as minimum number of functions that will be required to execute all your operations. So how it will so it's basically maximizing resource sharing, hence minimize resource usage. And subtask is function unit allocation binding and register allocation binding. So let's consider an example here. Suppose this is your schedule behavior. In the time step 1 you schedule these 2 operations, in time step 2 you schedule these 2 operations, and time step 3 you schedule these operations. So now you are asked to decide how many function unit you will use for your design. So the way the calculation is going on, it's basically we construct the conflict graph of these resources. So conflict graph means 2 operations are conflict each other if they are scheduled in the same time step. It is obvious, because it's clear, because they cannot be scheduled in the same, they cannot be executed in same using the one function unit. So by that way you can draw the conflict graph. For example, here there is a conflict graph between these 2, there is a conflict between these 2, and this is basically scheduled in the same time. So this is your conflict graph. Now do you know graph coloring? Graph coloring means you have given a graph, graph, set of node and the interconnections edges. And graph coloring is, the problem is like, what is the minimum number of color that you require to color the edges or the nodes of the graph, so that 2 adjacent node are a different color. Okay, like if we consider an example here. So suppose you have a very simple graph this. So if you assign red to this node, so you cannot assign red in this 3 node. So you can use suppose blue to this 3. Again, if you have a edge here, you cannot use blue to this. So you have to use something, suppose yellow to this. Okay. So this is basically graph coloring problem. So you have to use minimum number of color to color your nodes, so that two adjacent node have different color. Okay. So you can map this problem. So our objective is to map this function unit, so that what are the operations that can be executed in the same function unit. That is your objective in this phase, and this problem can be mapped to the graph coloring problem. Like for example, here you have this node. So they in the conflict graph, they have edges, mean they have conflict. So you will use the different color here. You will use some one color here, and in the, if you consider it's a graph coloring problem, so you will use different color here for this node and this node. And in the resource, means in your function unit allocation problem also same. You will execute this operation and this operation in different function unit. So essentially your function unit allocation problem is mapped to the graph coloring problem. So basically you will construct the conflict graph from the scheduled behavior, and then you call the graph coloring algorithm to find out the what are the minimum color that will require to color this conflict graph, and the node that have the same color that can be executed in the same function unit. Okay. and another alternative of this problem is you can also construct the compatibility graph from this schedule behavior. What is this? It's basically just opposite of the conflict graph. Conflict graph, you have a edge between two nodes when they have conflict, and in the compatibility graph you have a edge if between two nodes if they can be scheduled in the, they have no conflict, that means they can be scheduled in the same time step. So basically this is if you construct the conflict graph of this operation, this it will look like this. Okay. So that basically from the conflict graph you can construct the compatibility graph. So basically it's the, you know, the complete graph, na? Basically there is a edge between any two nodes. This is the complete graph. So you consider a complete graph of between these nodes and remove the node the edges which are in the complete graph, a conflict graph, then you will get the compatibility graph. Clear? So in the on conflict graph you will use the graph coloring problem, a graph coloring algorithm. In the compatibility graph you have to find the clique, you have to use the clique partitioning algorithm. So what means clique means is a complete subgraph. If you consider this graph that I have drawn here, clique means suppose you have considered a clique of 4 graph, that means they have edge between any two nodes. Okay. So basically a graph with n nodes have n into n minus 1 by 2 edges in a complete graph. So of this graph, this is a clique between, this is a subgraph between any node there is a edge. So in the compatibility graph you have to find out what are the cliques in within that compatibility graph. Clique means here there is a edge, means they can be scheduled in the same time step. So if you can find a clique of 4 nodes, that means they have edge between any two nodes, that means they don't have any conflict, so that can be scheduled in the same time step. So this problem can be mapped to the clique partitioning problem. Which so alternate to have a two approach, you can construct the conflict graph and use the graph coloring algorithm to find out the minimum number of resources function unit. Similarly, you can construct the compatibility graph and use the clique partitioning algorithm to do that. Clear? Here is a very simple example. Suppose the schedule like in the time step 1, O1 and O2 operation is scheduled, and in O3 and O4 is scheduled. So it's clear that O1 and O2 cannot be scheduled in the same, cannot be executed in the same function unit, but O1 and O3 can be. So this is one solution. So in the function unit you map O1 and O3, and function unit 2 you map O2 and O4. And graph coloring also says the same thing. So you have conflict between O1 and O2 and between O3 and O4. And if you color this graph, you can color this and this is the same color, but you cannot color these two in the same color. So you will record two different color, and as they are red, so they can be mapped in the same function unit, and they can be mapped to the same function unit. Okay. And this is the basically compatibility graph of that for these resources. So you can find out that this is one clique and this is one clique. Okay. So this is also an explanation of the graph coloring problem. Now come to the register allocation and binding problem. Here now your task is, you have set of variable in your design and you have to use minimum number of register to store this variable in your design. Okay. So what is the approach here? You have to, first thing you have to do, you have to compute the lifetime of each variable. So what is lifetime? Lifetime means the what is the span in the design schedule time step where this variable is live. That means where it is first defined and what is the time step where it is last used. So basically difference of them is the lifetime of a variable. Okay. So basically if you consider the DIFFQ solution that are suppose it's scheduled in the 4 time step. Okay. So here you can see the span of u is this 3 time step, x is this 3 time step. So these are the span where these variables are live. Like z1 is computed here and it's used here, and nowhere it is used. So its span is basically only 1. Okay. So by that way you can construct the lifetime of each variable. So this is looks like the lifetimes of each variable. So it's basically live here, and this is basically live to these two time steps, and this is only available in this one time step, and so on. Okay, and then again you can construct the conflict graph, okay, or maybe compatibility graph. Like if their lifetimes are overlapped, that means they cannot be mapped to the same registers. Okay, like this V4 and V6 cannot be mapped to the same register because at the same time they are live in your design, but you can map this V6 and V7 into the same registers. Okay, so again you can construct the conflict graph between these variables from their lifetime informations, or alternatively you can construct the compatibility graph from their lifetime. Okay, and use the graph color algorithm or click partition algorithm to find out the what are the minimum registers. So similarly for here these two can be, suppose you are using the click partitioning algorithm, so these two can be mapped to the same register, these two can be mapped to the same register, and these two, and they are that they need to be stored in different registers. So you need 6 register and you have 9 variable in your design. Okay, so this is the basic approach to get compute the registers and function. So is it visible? Okay. So suppose it's a behavior that represents the scheduled behavior. That means in the time step 1 these two operations schedule, in time step 2 these two operations are scheduled, and so on. And this is also the control flow. This is basically FSMD, for finite state machine of data path. It's a representation of a high level behavior. So it's basically after it's a behavior after scheduling. Okay, and suppose you have this register allocation and binding information, like register 1 will store uh, dx from this state to this state. Initially it does not store anything, so it's basically 5. And like R02 will store x from this step to this step, u will store from this step to this step, V0 from this step. So basically R1 will share by x, u, V0, V3, V5. So after allocation and binding, the behavior will looks like this. Basically you will replace your variable in the design with the registers from their uh, lifetime this sharing informations of this table. Okay, now come to the point, the last phase is data path and controller generation. uh, I already discussed that now after register allocation and binding, your performance of the function unit are decided, and what are the input set that have to be put to the that function unit in different time step is also decided. Only thing you have to uh, design the interconnect among them. And data path interconnections may be two types. One is the marks base. Between the registers file you will put some marks. I mean in, so it's understand that if the left input of the function unit takes R1 in one time step and R6 R5 in one time step, so you have to use a marks to control the input to the function unit. So this is one possible way. Another possible is the bus base. You have set of registers, you have function unit, you have set of buses. So and the from in the buses you will only transfer only one value at a particular time, so that value will be fed to the function unit. Okay, this is two possible way of interconnections. Here is one example what kind of uh, optimization that you can perform during data path generation. Suppose you have two function unit and these are the input that you can fed to the left input, and these are the input that you can fed to the right input. So here you can see you need a 4 into 1 multiplexer because there are 4 uh, input to the marks. So but uh, if you take the operation carefully, you understand that in the first time steps here this L1 is input and here R3, and you can and it's a addition operation, so you can commutate that operation, like A equal to B plus C, you can do C plus B also. So you can just swap the input to the left and right input. So if you do this R with R3 and R1 and also with R5 to R2, and you do this, so what will affect? You need only 2:1 multiplexer, because in that case you only need in this left you only the input from the register 3 and register 2 need to fed, and for this you need to fed only from R1, R5 and R3. So you need a 2:1 multiplexer. So you have optimized your design. So these are the basic strategy, by that way you can optimize your design. Okay. The last phase is controller generation. So your everything is fixed, your data path is fixed. On listings you have to assign the control signals. So you basically decide how many control signals is required for every component, like for marks, for function unit. If it perform more than one operation, so you need some control signals. So by that you will assign, you will select minimum number of control signals for your design, and your controller FSM will be generated accordingly, because it will generate some status signal, and depend upon it will select what will be the next step, and execution flow of this within this data path will be controlled by the controller. Okay. So is there any questions in the overflow? No questions. Is the whole flow is clear to all of you? Almost. Okay. Then thank you all.